We are going to touch on special teams because, I mean, heading into this fall camp, this was probably the biggest question mark. You're replacing everyone, right? This roster's loaded, and then special teams, new kicker, new punter, returner, with Jake Moody off to the NFL, Brad Robbins off to the NFL, and then AJ Henning now at Northwestern. So we have some things we know. Louisville transfer and former Ann Arbor resident James Turner is going to be the kicker. He's going to handle field goals and extra points. There's a chance he might not do kickoff duty. He didn't do kickoffs last year for Louisville, something there. But Tommy Doman is maybe not known to a lot of folks, but a really, really good punter. He was a really high-ranked punting recruit. There was a chance before Turner came in that he would have been doing everything, Kenny Allen style.
Yeah.
Right? I think that's a lot to ask of a guy first year starting on a national championship team. So I guess let's start with those two spots kicking. I mean, there's going to be a drop off from Moody to Turner. You're glad you've added Turner,
right?
But there is going to be a drop off.
Yeah. I mean, Michigan was spoiled with Jake Moody. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, that's a prolific generational kicker. Really, you're talking about there. Those don't come around every so often. So, yeah, James Turner's going to be your guy. I think he's a good kicker. I don't think he's bad, but I don't think he's Jake Moody good. And, that's kind of an unfortunate situation for him to walk into, because you're walking into a situation where you're replacing Michigan's arguably one of the greatest kickers in program history, if not the greatest kicker in program history. So, it's unfortunate that that's going to get overshadowed a little bit. But I mean, James Turner is an effective kicker. He's going to be good. We heard during the last scrimmage, not this last scrimmage, but the scrimmage before, he was very good in the kicking game. And I think he'll be good enough. I mean, yes, there's going to be drop off. I mean, I don't think you're going to see him hitting 100% from 40 to 45 yards like he did. But I don't think the kicking game is a concern. Let's take it that far. I think they're in good hands with James Turner for a year.
Good foot.
What was that?
It's a good foot.
Right. So, and the punter too. I think Jim Harbaugh's been pretty high on Tommy Doman. Is saying he might have one of the most prolific kicking legs he's ever seen. So, and I tend to agree with that. I think he is a far more talented kicker in terms of leg talent when compared to Brad Robbins, and he was a NFL draft pick. So Tommy Doman has a chance to be a really, really good punter and kind of really flip the field. So the big question now kind of just comes down to what's depth going to look like on the rest of the special teams. And that's still something that, Michigan is still figuring out 1 through 4, in all positions, not necessarily a starter, or in this case, in the special teams, a stater in kick return. I mean, we'll ultimately see. I'm not ready to say like so-and-so is becoming a stater at kick return, or someone is a starter at punt return. I'm not really ready for that yet. Carmelo English is a guy that's kind of risen the ranks a little bit, but they're still very much in the figuring it out stage 1 through 4.
I thought we made an agreement. I started the show by saying everyone makes mistakes, and I left out the R on starter.
If we just let that go, someone's going to be like, "Hey, idiot! It's starter, not stater."
This entire depth chart, I had one mistake.
Yeah, right. I mean, you got to make fun of ourselves.
Real quick,
gotta have fun with it.
Real quick before we move on to the chaos that is the return situation right now.
Yeah.
James Turner last year, 38 of 39 on extra points. So he did miss one. Moody does not miss extra points. The big thing, I think, with Turner, so he was 20 of 22 on field goals, made everything from 20 to 29 yards, everything from 30 to 39, 3 of 5, 40 to 49, and 0 50-yard attempts. So I think that's the big drop off. I think he's going to be consistent and reliable on those 40 or less. I don't think he's going to bail you out on the long field goals like Moody was able to do. So,
Yeah.
and you could make the argument, you hope he's not kicking a lot of those short field goals because you're hoping the offense is scoring more touchdowns, doing better work in the red zone. So when it comes to that outside range and you're 4th and 2, it's going to be interesting to see what Michigan does. If we see, I mean, they were a pretty prolific 4th down team last year already. It's going to be interesting to see if they punt more and lean into the defense that could be stronger, or if they take more risks with their offense. That'll be kind of an interesting dynamic for me. But yeah, Brock, we're going to move on to the returners. Somebody already asked that I don't have Alex Orji in on the kick return. I know Harbaugh mentioned it, but he also mentioned he also mentioned very specifically some blocking things, and he would love to do that, and he thinks Orji would be really good. Alex Orji's not returning kicks to start the season, okay, or probably at all, right? Like I don't know, but anyway, so we've got, these aren't the names I initially had on here, but these are the names that have been mentioned. So Kalel Mullings is listed at kick returner and punt returner. Roman Wilson, I mean, not a shock. He was involved on kick returns last year. I think he's probably the guy you'll see back there. And then we've heard multiple times that Iman Dennis might be the fastest dude on this team. So not shocking to see him mentioned with kick returner. Brock, I wanted to bring up a name that I thought was very interesting, and that is Donovan Edwards on punt returns.
Yeah, that's interesting. And right away, it kind of gives you, I don't know if Michigan might be in a close game with Ohio State this year or not, but could you imagine Edwards, maybe having that punt return like Charles Woodson or Desmond Howard?
Oh, baby.
Like that, especially with what he did last year, that put him into maybe even a different category, right? And so I don't know if that's the way they're going to go. I think Michigan would be smart if they kept, or if someone else maybe stepped up, because Edwards is going to be so involved in the running game and maybe even in the slot as a receiver. He's going to have a lot on his plate. And so if he's the best punt returner on the team, then sure, throw him in there. But it definitely wouldn't hurt Michigan at all. And in fact, it maybe even benefit them if someone else like Kalel Mullings or Carmelo English or Tyler Morris stepped up just to take a little bit off of Edwards' plate.
Do we know what their goal is, Josh? And what I mean by that is, do they want, just especially starting the year, do they want the most reliable catcher back there, like a guy that's especially on fair catches? Like, we don't want any muffs. We just want to, you catch the ball and the offense come out and do the work.
Mm-hmm.
Or we've seen that position be a weapon for Michigan. Jabril Peppers, Donovan Peoples-Jones at times, AJ Henning, obviously, at times he had some return touchdowns, because I love the idea of somebody like Donovan Edwards on returns. If you think, because we've seen what that dude can do with space, right? And in terms of, like you just said, Brock, if I'm thinking Heisman stuff and Donovan's running the ball, catching the ball, and returning kicks, I'm like, ooh, okay. But if, like, I see Mullings at both spots, that's just the guy they trust back there to catch the ball. Like, where do you think they're going to? Same thing with Sainer still being listed as there as well.
Yeah, I think it ultimately comes down to, I don't know what their ultimate goal is. And, if they end up going the Alex Orji route, then, it's they're in a position where they want to create plays. They want to create electricity.
That'd be so crazy.
I just don't see it happening right away. I'm sure it could be a fun little thing they'd throw in some random game down the line. I just don't see it happening with consistency. Maybe it happens towards the end of the year when Jim Harbaugh said that, these guys got to learn how to block first before we can allow him to back there. But
I love the idea of him being the second returner.
Yeah.
And you kick it his way, and guess what? He's throwing it to Roman Wilson on the other side of the field.
Yeah, I mean, that could be part of the equation where, you have a lateral in there involved somehow. But yeah, I don't know. It's a hard situation. I mean, it could be smart to just have him out there, on the field and kind of give something to think about. But, I think Michigan, personally, I think Michigan is better off with like a guy like Roman Wilson back there for kick return, returning kicks. Punt return, Donovan Edwards would be interesting. Carmelo English is pushing for that spot. I mean, there's just so many guys right now that are involved that I can't really say there's a leader in the clubhouse, but I don't know. I find it hard to believe that Orji is in that conversation right now. I mean, again, Harbaugh always has these weird packages that he likes to trot out every so often, and I'm sure that's part of it. I honestly don't know why he even said what he did, to be honest with you, but
he's so intrigued. He's just so intrigued by potential.
Yeah.
You know, he labeled Eric All the next, like, the greatest tight end. He had potential to be the best tight end in Michigan history as a freshman. Like, it's unnecessary pressure. He's tripled down on Amorian Walker being starter caliber at corner, right? He sees these guys, and it's a good thing. They're freak athletes, and he just knows, like, man, that the potential they could have. And when it comes to weird things, whether it's position changes or things like that, I trust Harbaugh. How many times as a player, going back to Zach Gentry, 4-star QB, getting moved to tight end?
Right.
You know, how many times has he done these position changes? He's been right. I just saw Tyrone Wheatley Jr. is playing tackle for the Cleveland Browns in the NFL right now.
Yeah. Wild.
Right. And that's a guy that came in at tight end. It was like, hey, maybe move to offensive line, whatever.
Yeah.
And he obviously goes a different route. He's in the NFL at tackle.
Yep. Yeah.
James Hudson.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I could go down the list of these dudes that it is what it is. So I trust Harbaugh with some of that. But right now, no. Right. I'm not ready for that.
I think you need a guy back there, at least to begin the year, someone who's reliable, who won't put the ball on the turf.
Yeah.
And that goes from kicking and punting. You know, a freshman back there, especially a true freshman, is kind of scary. I mean, because it's so much inexperience, and we've seen that, you know, some guys back there at punt return are it's an adventure back there. You know, they let balls bounce when they shouldn't bounce, all that kind of stuff. So I think the big thing, number one, you need to focus on is having a guy that's reliable, a guy that doesn't put the ball on the turf. And if that guy happens to be electric playmaker, then even better. And, you know, I think Roman Wilson has that capability. Donovan Edwards, I think, has that capability. Iman Dennis, another guy too, that I think has that capability, has a ton of speed. You know, we just haven't really seen him on the field to see what he can do, but I think he's got that capability to be a kick and punt returner. So we'll see. I mean, they've got a week to kind of figure things out, and I think they have a good idea of where they're headed, but this is going to be the week where, you know, there's going to be movements either way. So I'll be curious to find out what happens. And I mean, the good thing is that they have options. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. They don't have like a clear-cut number one guy right now. But, you know, I think that'll happen here in the coming days for sure.
Brock, I saw you look and you were thinking something.
I think I was thinking about Iman Dennis. I'm pretty sure he's a gunner on special teams, is he not? When Michigan's punting?
Yep.
So, yeah, we definitely know he's got some speed. I do think if I had to go with someone right now, I'd say Roman Wilson is the guy to beat out at kick returner. But punt returner, I feel like that's just way up in the air, and they might even have to rotate guys to start the season just to see who's most reliable and who's most dynamic.
Yeah.
And I'm with Josh. Yeah, that reliability, knowing you're going to catch it, I think is super important. I mean, as good as Henning was, even DPJ, there was still like those moments when the ball was in the air, like you'd still get a little anxious. Both of them had times where either they dropped it or let it bounce and then go grab it, whatever. We haven't had that guy, in my opinion, since Peppers, that every time he was back there, like not only did you have no fear about him catching it, but like you thought there was a chance he was going to house it.
Yeah.
Right. Every time he was back there. And if one of these guys has that, and I'm thinking Edwards, that feels like the guy to me that would pose that kind of risk to, you know, opposing teams. I'd love it. But yeah, you can't be turning the ball over, especially in close games. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. And I agree with you guys too on kick returns. Roman just makes too much sense at this point. He's already done it. He's the reliable guy. And then, yeah, we'll see. I would love a little orgy fake or trick play pass to Roman. That'd be pretty crazy.
I wouldn't be surprised to see it.
It would be so Jim Harbaugh to drop this little nugget before the season and then implement it during a game where he puts Orgy back there and has him throw it across the field.
Or don't use him at all, I guess. Yeah. It's weird. It's weird the things Harbaugh won't answer and the things he'll just randomly say. Right. That's the fun of our job.
That's Harbaugh for you.
Yeah, 100%.